So last weekend, Too Many Games happened, which is a video game convention in the Northeast, and it tends to focus more on retro games, although they have games from all different generations up to the PS5, Xbox Series, and Switch. Still though, I go to these events thinking, okay, I'm going to go in looking for retro titles. And while I did get some GameCube games, I also got stuff that I wasn't necessarily expecting, certainly some very unique pieces, and I wanted to go over that here today. So if you guys enjoy the video, make sure that like button, subscribe if you're new. And I also wanted to talk a bit about the experience there because it was awesome. Now, went there and met up with a bunch of the people that would be on the Spawncast, and we did a whole panel there, which I did post up last night in a premiere, so you can check it out. It's about an hour or so that we did, and while I couldn't post the entire thing up on YouTube because they didn't seem to like Sean's entrance music, I did post it in full in a video on the Spawncast Patreon, so it is there in case people wanted to check it out. But we had a blast. We did the panel, and then we also did a meet and greet photo ops, like signing thing, where basically viewers could come out and hang out for a bit, but it ended up being much bigger than the convention was prepared for. They gave us like an hour to do it, and it seemed like that would have been plenty of time, but then we started to see the line that was forming, and yeah, it didn't actually work out with the time allotted. So I feel bad because after that hour was up, there were still a ton of people who were just waiting in line. So we decided to take it to the parking lot because it literally was too much for the convention hall to handle, mostly because they didn't have anywhere else for us to go, and there was another signing meet and greet thing happening in that same room right after us. So I feel bad because we went out into what was like 90-degree heat and like 100% humidity. It was crazy. It wasn't exactly the most comfortable place to hang out and wait, but people still did, and we were able to still meet up with all the people who were waiting in line. I've already talked to the organizers. In fact, I talked to them before I left, and I think next year, because we are all going back next year, we're just going to extend it to like 2 hours. I'd rather have too much time than not enough, and then have people have to go out into a parking lot to do the rest of the meet and greet stuff. But definitely shout out to everyone who came out and were very patient with it, so we could spend as much time as possible with each person as they sort of came through. But to start things off, I did want to point out two things that were actually given to me during the meet and greet. One is this really cool piece it's a cross between like Metroid, obviously, and Mega Man sort of coming together here. And I'm not really sure what material exactly it is. It's sort of like these beads, I guess, are like small pieces of plastic that are then melted together in sort of this 8-bit configuration, but it's really, really cool. It's very light as well, and then on the back, it's sort of all one piece, so I figure I'm gonna hang it up with a command strip. It's very light, so I don't think it's going to fall off there. So again, thank you to the person who actually gifted this during that meet and greet. There were a lot of people coming through, so I didn't necessarily remember the names of people who gifted this stuff, but I do want to recognize that. A big thank you there. And then the other one, I think, was from Varang over on the Discord, but it's a Mega Man command mission, which, if you're unfamiliar, this is sort of an RPG back during the GameCube era with Mega Man X. I'm sorry, Mega Man X was what this was focused around. This one, though, is the Japanese variant for the GameCube, and I mean the box art speaks for itself. It's incredible stuff, and whatever booth they picked this up at, on the sides they printed out the English title for it, put it on the spine for it on either side, and it is sealed, but I think this is just an aftermarket seal, as in the person who sold it then just went ahead and did a shrink wrap job on it. Don't believe this is like factory, and mostly I assume to protect it from stickers and things they're putting on there. So hey, I mean, a shout out to the vendor who did that, but really, really cool. I'm always a fan of getting Japanese versions of different GameCube games, mostly because 99% of the time the artwork is just better. Now, on top of this, I also bought a bunch of stuff for the kids, which was mostly Kirby stuff. Kirby is like the big character in this house, apparently, and that's all they want. So I bought like plushies and little toys that they thought looked cool, and that sort of thing. It's mostly taking pictures, and it's like, okay, what do you think of this? What do you think of this? So plushies, a Kirby kitchen or something. These are things that are like in Japan, but then obviously get shipped out here, and they sell them here at the convention. So a lot of Kirby stuff, we'll say, came home, and then a lot of happy kids because of it. But after all of that shopping was done, I did pick up some GameCube stuff, so I figured we'd take a look at some of the new pieces here, new additions to the collection, and actually one was even like a replacement for a game that was kind of chewed up technically. But we'll start here at the top, and that's with R Racing Evolution. Now this is one that I wasn't necessarily familiar with, but you can see it's Namco, and when I opened it up, it's pretty cool because it is one of those dual disc cases. You don't see many GameCube games take advantage of sort of this configuration, which is one of the reasons that it caught my eye. I mean, it is complete and everything looks great, but it has a Pac-Man Versus disc in there with it. And as I mentioned, I wasn't very familiar with the game. Obviously, it's a racing title. It does progressive scan, which is cool to have that to use with the Eon adapter. But for the most part, I just thought it was interesting to see that, and I didn't have it in the collection. But let me know if you had R Racing Evolution, if it's any good, and what exactly is up with the Pac-Man Versus disc, because it doesn't really look like it's advertised anywhere on the case as coming with it, other than just the E to T rating, because, well, Pac-Man Versus, that disc is E, and then the R Racing Evolution is teen. Next up, I did get Pikmin, the first one. And the reason I got this is because the one I had is disc only, and it's pretty chewed up. Even like the top, that's top disc art is kind of like dissolving almost, it looks like. This one was very clean. The manual looks great. And if you've never looked through the manual, by the way, this is the first Pikmin game, right? Like, so they had to sort of introduce things and like the scale of it. They show Olimar and the Pikmin, and they try to add it to scale next to a GameCube disc, memory card, and controller. And they even imprint almost like a ruler part here on the side in inches. I just thought it was very creative to show just how small these characters are and the little Pikmin that are running around. But yeah, I had to get it. I already have Pikmin 2. I needed a good looking copy of Pikmin 1. And now I have it here. And then I had Pokemon Channel. I got this and Pikmin from the same booth. And then I wheeled and dealed a bit and got a Kirby plushie for almost nothing because of that. But Pokemon Channel is one that I've looked at here and there. I just had no idea what it was. I hadn't played it before. And to my understanding, it legitimately is a TV and you flip around between different Pokemon channels. It's that straightforward. This is interesting because it did have e-reader cards. They said they had one there with the e-reader cards, but it was significantly more expensive. So I didn't go for that. I also don't really have an e-reader or anything to use it for, but this was definitely a creative game, we'll say, back then. I don't know if I'm going to spend a lot of time playing it. I will probably fire it up just to see what it is exactly. But let me know if you were a big Pokemon Channel person, because on the back it shows you can do painting. It's like Pokemon Paint almost. They have an exclusive Pichu Bros and Party Panic video, I guess. So there were some interesting things here, I guess, with what amounted to you flipping channels on a TV. Time Splitters 2, had to get it, which obviously I didn't have it before, but I had like Future Perfect. Time Splitters 2 is a classic game. And while I do remember Time Splitters more from the PS2 than anything else, the GameCube works out great because it does have the 4 controller slots outright. You don't need a multi-tap or anything. And Time Splitters 2 is just that first-person shooter arcade kind of classic. I did think it was funny that on the front, it says heir apparent to GoldenEye. Someone might want to tell Embracer Group that, but looking around it, it's in great shape. The manual looks nice and clean. The disc seems like it's been barely used. So yes, very happy to add Time Splitters 2 to the collection next to Future Perfect. Next, I have the Mystic Ryan approved pickup of YuGiOh, the Falsebound Kingdom. Let me tell you, by the way, this guy went around to so many booths looking for YuGiOh cards, and he got shot down like 80% of the time. But he did find a few booths and managed to actually walk away with what seemed to be popular sets, I guess, for you. I'm not really into the whole Yu-Gi-Oh thing when it comes to the cards. Not 100% sure on where they are with collecting and stuff now, but the games themselves from this era, while I did mostly play it, I remember on the Game Boy Advance, occasionally I would see these console versions of Yu-Gi-Oh, and I would at least be interested in it. I remember playing one where it was like dice, it was almost strategy-based, but I did not play the Falsebound Kingdom, and only for GameCube, so sure, should pick it up. It said it had 3 limited edition official game cards inside. Not this one, which I assume people probably try to find these cards all the time, so if it was in there, it would have been way more expensive. This did not have a manual though, so I was able to knock the price down because it was not complete, which I do have an entire stash of cover art and manuals, and I was kind of hoping that I would have had the manual there. I didn't though. And what I mean by that is, let's say I get this Need for Speed Underground Player's Choice, just disgusting cover art with that yellow banner on it and stuff. I can change that out with cover art that I've been collecting, and sometimes I'll find lots of it. In this case, for example, Need for Speed Underground, I not only had the manual, but I had the full cover art that I did a replacement here, and it looks much better. The GameCube case itself does need some help, maybe even full replacement, but when you do have stashes of cover arts and manuals, it does make it a bit easier to fill out a collection, even if you're missing a manual, provided, of course, you have it in your large stack. So I will still keep looking for YuGiOh the Falsebound Kingdom manual, but for now, I'm at least able to add the game to the collection. So with those games in mind, I also managed to pick out some more unique pieces from like the Artist Alley that they had there. And these were shadow boxes, and I've seen these on occasion. Last year, I kind of walked by the booth, took a look at them, but didn't necessarily pick any up. This time, though, I grabbed 2 of them, and unfortunately, I lost the person's card. They gave me a card for the shadow boxes, like I guess they had like a website or an Etsy or something. Oh, they did mention that there were some issues holding some of these, we'll say, intellectual properties up on an Etsy store. But I did pick up, like I said, 2 of them. One is really cool. You can see here the iconic scene from A Link to the Past, where we have the Master Sword in the woods. And the way that these shadow boxes work is you have like layers of what looked to me to be like kind of cardboard or paper. And they're layered in a way that if you shine light on it, it does leave shadows and adds a ton of depth to it. And I just think it's really, really cool. You can hang them up pretty easily. These aren't like super heavy or massive picture frames or anything. And it looks really, really cool at an angle or straight on. The way that they had them displayed, they had like a little spotlight above it. I don't know if that's the move. I'm almost wondering if I can put like a very small, thin LED strip kind of like underneath the top, I guess, top lip of this. I'll play around with some ideas for that, or I'll just get some really cheap IKEA spotlights or something to hang above it. But I got that, and I had to get the Mega Man X3 Shadow Box. Why? Because no one ever has any love for Mega Man X3, and that is still, when I think back on the old days for Mega Man and Mega Man X, that's still the one that I remember the most fondly. As weird as it sounds, because, again, no one talks about X3, I just think back to the idea of, okay, this is the first time you're going to control Zero. He's incredibly powerful with his sword, and they did it right away. It was well done by Capcom at that time, and eventually you can get Zero's saber and stuff, and that's really powerful. The gold armor, you have all the different ride armors and stuff. There was just so much to X3, and it felt like Capcom worked their way through the Super Nintendo era, just getting to the point where they could make an X3 after what they learned from the original X and X2. And of course, Blizzard Buffalo, again, iconic scene. And this is one where I feel like I can see the most depth from it, mostly because of the bars in the background separating it then from like the window and the backdrop. It just pops really, really nicely. Also, I noticed there are these QR codes here. Unfortunately, that's not to the person's store. It's for some augmented reality thing that they kind of explained to me, but I haven't really looked into it much further than that, so maybe one day I'll give it a shot and see exactly what it is. And then, of course, I do like to go to these shows to see if I can find a system or something for a future tech wave, and I was able to do that here as well, where I found a PS4 Slim. I know it sounds funny because you go to a retro convention and you think, okay, retro systems. The PS4 is kind of getting up. I mean, the PS4 is came out in 2013. It's like almost 11 years old now, but the PS4 Slim, when it came out in 2016, was overshadowed, sure, by the PS4 Pro, but this is a very interesting system inside, and if you have one, you'll notice that it's completely silent just about, and there was a lot of stuff that Sony did to alter and change the inside of the PS4 to accommodate a smaller and thinner form factor, and there were some other changes as well when it comes to the buttons and USB ports. So I think this would be a really fun tech wave to go through and see exactly how Sony managed to completely re-engineer that base PS4. Also, it did help that I was able to get it pretty cheap. I told the person I didn't need a controller, I didn't need cables, just the system, and I think I got it for like $70. It's not exactly the cleanest PS4 Slim, but I'm gonna be tearing it down anyway and cleaning it up, so I figure why not? At that price, it's a pretty easy pickup for a future video. But all in all, it was a really fun year at Too Many Games, and it was great to see everyone come out, even having RGT show up to a convention for the first time in like 6 years, and it seemed like he had a lot of fun, and I think many of these people are going to be coming back next year as well for another Spawncast, so it's going to be a good time in 2025. But for the most part, I was pretty happy with what I picked up. No, I didn't make a big swing at like at a GameCube game like a Cubivore or something. I'm still wondering where the market is going to go over the next couple of years. I'm hoping it maybe comes down a bit so I could grab one of those, but for the most part, a lot of those mid-tier games are still up for me to find. So like a Pokemon channel, that's kind of like mid-tier level stuff like that. That's mostly what I'm looking for right now to work to fill up that part of the collection. But let me know what you guys thought about some of the games, some of the unique pieces and stuff that I picked up here. And if you went to Too Many Games, what did you get and what did you think of the convention? Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.